Okay, everybody, we got some basketball to talk about. We have a panel here to talk about it. DraftKings contributors Garion, Thorne, and Nick Friar here for some NBA building blocks. So your favorite DFS plays at the following positions. 9-game NBA slate tonight.
All right, so Garion, who are you going to build around at center?
Well, I've been picking on the Dallas Mavericks basically all season long when it comes to opposing centers, and tonight they draw one of the best offensive centers in the league in Jonas Valanciunas. It's kind of weird we've gotten to this point, but he's $9,200. He's obviously coming off that huge performance in his last game, over 70 DraftKings points, 7 3-pointers. I don't necessarily think we can pencil that in once again, but the Mavericks have surrendered the most DraftKings points per game to opposing centers, and Valanciunas across his last 6 games has a usage rate above 32%, and he's averaging more than 1.5 DraftKings points per minute within that span of time. I just think he's going to absolutely demolish the interior of the Mavericks, especially if they don't have Kristaps Porzingis in this game. He's questionable, so that's something to keep an eye on. But either way, if Porzingis plays or if he doesn't, I think Valanciunas is in a smash spot.
All right, Nick, who do you think is in a smash spot at center?
Well, Nikola Jokic obviously is going to be a popular play tonight, as much as this is a pretty deep slate, especially at center 2 with Embiid playing 2, and of course Valanciunas, because the Magic are not a defensively efficient team, and they're one of the worst teams against centers. But speaking of not defensive efficient teams, I'm actually going to go for a little bit more value play here as another option outside of Jokic or Valanciunas. Robert Williams is supposed to be coming back tonight. He's not listed on the injury report. He's going up against the 76ers. They are in another bottom 10 team in defensive efficiency. And then when you look at like what Time Lord was doing before he got sick, it was 2 games that he ended up missing. He was a double threat. When he's getting his minutes, he's a double threat every single night, making his floor a little bit more reliable in that 5-6K range. And you look at what Mo Bamba did the other day against the 76ers too. He almost went off for 50 DK fantasy points himself. He's just a little more expensive than Robert Williams tonight. And the reason I just want to cite him again, because it was against the 76ers. So points can be scored, or fantasy points can be scored against Joel Embiid, no questions asked.
All right, what about it? What do you say? What are we going to go next? Forward? You want to go to forward?
Let's go to forward.
Okay, I mean, I was thinking center, but let's go to forward.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We just did center, so it'd be kind of weird if we did it again. But I gave you 2 picks. I guess that's not enough, Emerson.
No, it's really not.
For forward tonight, I like Chris Middleton. Actually, I feel like I'm not usually going with him a lot this season. Obviously, he's been pretty consistent, but for his price range, maybe you want a little bit more of a ceiling. But he's pretty much been playing. His ceiling has been his floor. It seems like he's averaging 33.4 DK fantasy points a game. You look at his last 10 games. I think it was actually 9 games ago that he went off over 40. But when you look at what he's got tonight, we're dealing with a game that has one of 2 games that has 2 teams that are top 10 in pace. The Hornets are second, the Bucks are tied for 4th, and this is the highest total on DraftKings Sportsbook tonight. And then the Hornets are one of the least efficient teams on the defensive end as well, so obviously makes it more beneficial for the Bucks. And the Hornets have not been great against small forwards this season either. They have allowed the 3rd most DK fantasy points against small forwards this season, so I'm going to go with Middleton tonight.
Garion, who do you like at forward for a building block? Or feel free to do center again. Doesn't bother me.
I might. Let's just freewheel here. I'm going to stick with that same game. I think, Nick brought it up. You have to attack this game in some capacity tonight. Not only is it the only game with a total above 230 points on this slate, it's the only game with a total above 220 points. That's how high the projected game total of this contest is, because as Nick mentioned, you've got 2 teams sitting inside the top 10 in pace and the top 10 in offensive efficiency. So points are going to be scored in this game, and I think there's a nice sort of tier for the Hornets at forward. You've got 2 options, essentially. You can go with Miles Bridges, who hasn't been quite as good lately as he had been in October. The shooting numbers, the efficiency numbers were down in November. He's 7,800, or I would maybe prefer to go with someone like Gordon Hayward, who is $6,300. Sort of fits that Middleton tier that Nick was talking about. He's not a guy with a massive ceiling. He's more about his floor. But that floor has really been coming into play as of late, because he's scored at least 30 DraftKings points in 6 of his last 7 games. So I think someone who has the safety of Hayward, who's put into an environment that could draw that ceiling out of him, is a really nice spot and a really nice place to go at just over 6K.
Garion, which guard has that building block potential?
So I'm going to go with a real value play here. Chris Duarte is $4,000. We haven't talked a lot about Duarte since he got removed from the starting lineup, as the Pacers have gotten healthier throughout the season, but Justin Holiday is now in the health and safety protocols for the Pacers. And while losing a starting player for any team would be a big deal, it's especially a big deal for Indiana. If you look at their last game, their loss on Monday to the Timberwolves, they basically ran a 7-man rotation. They don't have a lot of guys they trust on this team right now. Justin Holiday played 38 and a half minutes. So there is a huge void to fill tonight. And I think Duarte, along with maybe like Keelan Martin, is really going to have to step up. Duarte's averaged over 30 minutes per game in the starts he's made so far this season. I think he could be looking at 35 minutes, maybe even more than that in this matchup against the Hawks. So I think Duarte at 4,000, someone who's gone over 20 DraftKings points in each of his last 5 games. He's going to hit 5x value. It's just a matter of can he get to 6x, 7x, maybe even 8x value. And I think it's a possibility.
Nick, where are you going with your guard pick?
Yeah, this is going to be dependent on what happens with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo tonight, who are both questionable due to injuries. Tyler Herro is going to be my top guy if they are both out, or even if one of them is out. I know Kyle Lowry is an appealing option as well, but Tyler Herro is a little bit cheaper. He's averaging more in terms of fantasy point production as well. And when you have Bam and Butler off the floor, and both Herro and Lowry are still on, Herro sees a much greater impact to his usage rate. It bumps all the way up to 30.5%, whereas Lowry is at 18.5%. And then if Lowry's off the floor tonight, which probably will happen at some point when Herro is playing, who is probable, so he should be fine, he's at his usage rate bumps all the way up to 34.5%. And I know Herro himself is coming off some missed time, but it was for general body soreness, so that doesn't necessarily worry me at all. I know last minute in the first game that he missed was his illness, so it seems like it was kind of more a mixed bag in terms of what he was dealing with. So not really concerned for me coming off. He's basically looking at it as he got a little bit of rest, and now he's coming into a game where he's probably going to be leaned on more than he normally is.
Nick, let's switch things up to DK Sportsbook here before you guys wrap up this segment. So hook me up with your favorite NBA bet tonight.
So I mentioned Nikola Jokic off the top, of course, and I think for him to go get a triple-double tonight is very much within the realm of possibility. Of course, Jokic is one of the guys who's always liable to pop off for that. That's at plus 400, but I think that's something worth, as Garion will put it sometimes, like to sprinkle a little bit on that. But I think the best bet, if you're just going to go with one and a little more in on it, it would be Jokic's points, rebounds, assists total. That's at 45.5. He's gone over that in 8 of his last 10 games. As I mentioned before, the Magic are not a good team defensively against, in general, but not a good team defensively against the centers.
Garion.
I think that means you can answer.
Thought it was going to be more of a question. I'm going to go with the under in the Rockets Thunder game. I know the game everyone will be watching. We're all so excited for it. But, we mentioned how there's only one game with a huge total on this slate. I think 214.5 is a pretty huge total for these two teams. If you look across their last 10 games, there are only 2 teams in the NBA who are scoring less than 100 points per 48 minutes. And that is the Thunder and the Rockets. I know the Rockets play at a pretty fast pace, but the Thunder play at a glacially slow pace. So I think it all evens out in the wash. These teams can't score in the half court. I just don't see them getting to this number. I mean, if you just isolate the Thunder specifically, they've hit the under in 11 of their last 15 games. It's not a whole lot better with the Rockets. I would just blindly bet the under with these two teams in most situations. So the fact they're playing each other, yeah, just give me that under.